Well, you can clearly see the gunshot wound to the forehead. It's a large, gaping hole. It was really eerie.
A brutal killing.
To me, it'd be a cold-blooded murder because he was unarmed.
A dark mystery with multiple suspects.
It's a good possibility that he interrupted a burglary and ended up costing his life.
In a love triangle, there's always a jealous husband or a jealous wife, more than capable of killing.
This is a crime where somebody is intensely angry and saying, now I'm going to show you that you're not going to be able to get away with that.
The truth will be revealed.
We knew that we were possibly letting the killer go.
Every day in North America, dozens of people are murdered. The key to solving the toughest of these homicides lies in the final 24 hours of the victim's life. To crack the case, detectives must reconstruct that critical timeline. The minutes and hours containing evidence that can help unlock the mystery and catch the killer. Tucson, Arizona, tucked into the southwest corner of the United States. It's a peace-loving oasis that boasts sunshine all year round.
Tucson attracts a lot of free-spirited people. There's a lot of spas, there's yoga retreats, and I think people are drawn to the warm weather there.
It's a Sunbelt city, and so Sunbelt cities are subject to more property crimes than anything else. And of course, Tucson's a hub for a lot of drugs coming up from Mexico. And so as drugs move through, crime happens.
On a warm September morning, the slow pace of the city is violently disturbed.
The neighbor was walking by and looked over and could see someone laying face up on the porch and called 911 immediately.
911, what's your emergency?
I got called out about 6 a.m. and when I got there it was about 6:30. Police officers were on the scene. The crime scene tape was up. It was a warm day, a very hot day actually. It was in September, and we had just gotten through with the monsoon season, so it was somewhat humid as well. I could see the victim laying face up on his porch. He appeared to have a large hole in his forehead. Could tell it was a gunshot wound. Blood was off to the side, pooled up, and it looked like he was in his yoga shorts and a tank top.
The victim is 45-year-old yoga instructor, Michael Dehakus.
Michael Dehakus was a very calm individual, and yoga was just the perfect fit for him. Not only was Michael a yoga teacher, but he worked out of his garage as a machinist.
He was an ordinary person. According to his neighbors, he was well-liked and very friendly.
Veteran detective Benjamin Jimenez is tasked with leading the investigation into Michael Dehakus' murder. They start by examining the body looking for clues.
You can clearly see the gunshot wound to the forehead. It's a large, gaping hole. Didn't appear that it was a contact wound, so we felt that it was consistent with possibly anywhere from 2 to 5 feet away from the victim when the gun was fired. And there was blood that had gone down his clothing on his legs, so he was standing when he was shot.
It was just a single gunshot, so we assumed that it was a revolver that was used. If it were a semi-automatic handgun, there would have been a bullet casing somewhere. We also noted he had some scratches on his hands. The scratches were significant, and we believed that it was a struggle inside the house.
The medical examiner in this case viewed the body there at the scene, and based on the fact that Michael was not in rigor, rigor mortis at that time. We all felt, and the doctor felt, that it was consistent with Michael dying possibly 5 to 8 hours prior to this. At this time, we are thinking that Michael died late Thursday night, early Friday morning after midnight.
To find the killer, detectives will need to unravel the final 24 hours of Michael's life.
As we make entry into Michael's house, we see that there's some broken glass in the kitchen. We're feeling that possibly the struggle occurred there in the kitchen and moved its way out the front porch, which is very close proximity to each other. The home did not appear to be ransacked. There were some stacked instruments inside the kitchen area by the kitchen door. There was an amplifier, a music stand. As I walked around the side of the house, I could see stacked instruments. There was a violin, a guitar case. It looked like Michael foiled a burglary.
Detectives believe the thieves were looking for musical instruments to sell for cash.
There were some scratches on his body that led us to believe there was some type of struggle. So we felt that he had fought with the burglars and he was shot.
And it ended up costing his life.
Investigators canvass the neighborhood, hoping to uncover information that will flesh out Michael's timeline.
Between 2:30 and 4 p.m. on Thursday, the day before Michael was killed, the neighbor could hear machines going on in the machine shop area and felt that Michael was working on something. This helps us put Michael at home just a few hours before his death. So it helps us to establish our timeline as to when he was alive and then dead. Michael lived in a low-income area, high in property crimes, theft, and burglary. We felt it was important to go into the computer database and find out if there's any known burglars in the area. We found that 2 individuals had been arrested the weekend before and were still in jail. They had stolen a guitar in one of the burglaries. So we felt that these people could be possible suspects and that we need to interview them.
The persons of interest turn out to be Joseph Keyes and David Wynn.
We find out where they live. They live in close proximity to where Michael lived. So we're fairly confident that we have a very strong lead in the case at this point.
The fact that we have a burglar in the region taking musical instruments and that the victim had musical instruments, on the surface seems to be a connection. It seems compelling, but bear in mind that musical instruments are among the most commonly stolen items in residential break-ins, and it could just be a coincidence. Does it merit exploring? Absolutely.
Coincidences quite often pay off in terms of determining what happened in events. And so a lot of the times people are found through lucky breaks.
Both Joseph and David did have prior arrests for drug use. So we felt that this possibly could be a burglary for drug money and that they were involved in Michael's death when he came home and found them.
With suspicions swirling around the burglars, Detective Jimenez leads the interrogation, hoping to get one of them to flip.
Not every rigorous interview is an interrogation. Interrogation actually entails a 9-step process designed to extract a confession from a suspect during what's usually an in-custody interview. The fact that in this case there's 2 separate offenders who can be questioned separately and played off each other gives the police an additional advantage.
In separate interviews, they both denied any involvement in any burglary. They would not speak to me and basically invoked their rights, so I couldn't speak to them any further. Our investigation doesn't stop there. Based on where they live, close proximity, what they stole in the previous burglary, I get a search warrant for their home. They lived together in about a mile away from where Michael lived.
The search reveals a shocking discovery.
I found some bloody shoes, some bloody clothing. Based on that, we're pretty excited that we possibly have a great lead in this case. So it led us to believe that they're more involved than just burglary. They could be involved in Michael's death.
Believing they have found physical evidence tying the thieves to Michael Dehakus' murder, homicide detectives send David Wynn's bloody jeans to forensics.
We know that the DNA testing is going to take about a week, but we're very confident at this point that we have the right guys in this case.
It's extremely important not to have tunnel vision. Human beings are biased by nature, and so we look for evidence to confirm our suspicions. And so people, when they're investigating crimes, really have to be careful to look for alternative evidence, alternative explanations, and challenge ourselves to do so.
Detectives push the investigation forward by checking Michael's cell phone records.
They want to find out how this person lives their life, who they're interacting with day to day, and whether there might be someone who could have the motive to want to kill them.
The phone was an old cell phone. He didn't have any recent phone calls, but the name Amber was the very first person on the phone list. I called her and left a message that I needed to talk to her about her friendship with Michael.
Amber Trudell was 28 years old, and she had moved to Tucson from New York. She was married, and she took private lessons from Michael in her yoga class.
Detectives search for Amber, hoping she can offer insight into Michael's final 24 hours.
They called her, no answer. They went to her house, no response. They didn't know where to find her. She was in the wind.
Detectives then visit her workplace at the Child and Family Resources Center and speak to her boss.
She said Amber is very reliable. She's never missed a day of work. She's a bookkeeper for this business. And the employer tells us that she left town on Thursday morning, saying that she had to get out of town. There was a family emergency. She seemed upset on the phone, and that she would be back on Monday. So Tuesday morning, she's not back yet.
Amber's boss then tells detectives something that turns the case on its head.
The employer tells us that Michael and Amber were having an affair.
The boss knew that Amber was married and that the person she was seeing was now dead. So, possible theory, jealous husband.
In a love triangle type situation, there's always a jealous husband or a jealous wife, more than capable of killing.
Detectives quickly learn the identity of Amber's husband, Justin Goodwins, a man with a shady history.
A criminal history background is done on Justin. We find a domestic violence arrest in the past involving Amber.
Domestic violence is very common. You know, it is common for people to get angry and do bodily harm to somebody that they're allegedly involved or in love with.
Given this mix of domestic violence, infidelity, anger, and other negative emotions, Justin could have, done something to harm Amber, killed her, or even Michael.
It's a very strong possibility that Justin was involved in this case. We haven't heard from Amber, so possibly he's the reason that she's missing now.
As investigators consider the theory that Justin may have killed Michael and harmed Amber, they get another surprising tip from Amber's boss.
Amber's employer tells us that there's a moving van outside of Amber's home, and she recognizes Justin in the driveway along with another male. and they're loading furniture into the moving van. This is very suspicious in nature. It appeared they're leaving town, so the red flags go up. The fact that Justin was arrested for domestic violence in the past, he could have some type of violent tendencies. We feel Justin could be dangerous to be approached with caution. We call out the SWAT team along with some detectives, and we go out there and confront Justin. Justin has a 9mm semi-automatic handgun on him. 9mm is consistent with the .38 caliber .357 used in the murder. It's very possible that that is the gun that was used to kill Michael.
Detectives send the gun to ballistics and bring the suspect, Justin Goodwins, down to the station for questioning.
He tells us that he and Amber are separating and that he was just loading his items to get out and leave town.
It's good timing that police showed up at Justin's place when they did. He's literally in the midst of packing up and fleeing town. The excuse he provides is, the relationship's gone south and he's just moving on, but this is all the makings of his getting out of Dodge.
They ask Justin if he knows about Amber's affair with Michael Dehakus.
He tells us that she has done this before to him. He talked about a time when she left him and went to visit her boyfriend in Colorado. So this was no news to Justin as far as that Amber was doing this again. He was upset with her, and that's why they were going to get a divorce.
When a spouse learns that their partner has been cheating on them, there's infidelity, or they've been unfaithful for a long period of time, especially, people can become angry, even enraged. This is a crime where somebody is intensely angry and somebody's saying, you've done something, it's made me angry, and now I'm going to show you that you're not going to be able to get away with that.
I told Justin that Michael Dehakus had been murdered. And that's when you could see he got physically upset, and he was very nervous.
Investigators ask Justin when the last time he saw Amber was.
He tells us that Amber came home, it was very late. He thinks it was early morning hours on Thursday. She smelled of alcohol. He knew she'd been drinking. She was well dressed, and he felt that maybe she was out fooling around on him again. She was upset. She wasn't making sense. He says that he can't get any answers out of her other than the fact that something bad has happened. So he takes her to his parents' house in Sholo, Arizona, and then drops her off and says she needs a break for a few days. He comes back to Tucson and goes back to work because he has to be at work on Friday. At the end of the weekend, he goes back to Sholo to pick her up, sometime Sunday, and brings her back to Tucson, and that's the last he saw of her. And that's where he's being evasive with us, because I feel that he really does know where she's at, but he won't explain.
One has to question the fact that Justin places Amber out of town at the time that Michael is murdered. These two things coinciding is fishy, and you have to wonder if that was done by design.
They drill down on Justin, demanding answers.
We asked him point blank if he was involved in the murder of Michael Dehakus, and very no, arms waving type. I had nothing to do with that. I don't know what you're talking about. I was just trying to take care of Amber because I knew she was upset and knew she needed to get out of town.
When Justin says Amber's out of town, it could look like an alibi for Amber, but it could also look like Justin's protecting himself and deflecting the police from knowing that Amber's dead.
It's all suspicious. It's very confusing. Something's going on between Justin and Amber. How it's related to Michael, I'm getting feelings that it is, but I'm not sure.
Just then, the interrogation gets interrupted by a colleague.
A police officer who had Justin's property, his wallet, and his cell phone. tells me that Detective Jimenez, his phone has been ringing off the hook with a number, and the officer took it upon himself to trace the number, and the number came back to a local hotel here in Tucson. We were extremely excited about this in the sense that it's possible that we have a great lead in this case.
Detectives are rushing over to the hotel because it's vital to them that they understand who has been calling and calling and calling. And when they open the door, they can't believe what they find. It's Amber, the missing wife.
Detectives have tracked down Justin's wife, Amber, unharmed and holed up in a hotel room.
That information is relayed back to me at the police station. That's when I go back into the interview room and tell Justin what we've found and the fact that I believe he is lying to me.
What detectives want to know is why.
He does explain that he feels bad that he had to lie to us because they are having problems with their marriage, but they were thinking on leaving town to get a new start. That's where he shifts his story as to getting a new start as compared to being on the verge of divorce and separating.
Police bring Amber down to the station, hoping she can shed some light on Justin's involvement in Michael's murder.
She seemed very polite and kind of wanted to know what this was all about.
We told her that Michael had been murdered. We expected some kind of response, some sadness or, at least a response of tears or something. We didn't get it.
It didn't seem very natural to me that she wasn't upset about Michael's death. She admitted she was in an intimate relationship with Michael and it had been going on for some time.
She's more concerned about, is she a suspect, than who killed Michael Dehakus, the man that she was in love with.
They ask Amber when the last time she saw Michael was.
She hadn't seen Michael in several days. She last saw him at a yoga class. Amber was evasive with us. Short answers, an attitude to like being upset, but yet, still willing to talk to us.
Investigators inquire as to whether she owns a gun. Amber admits she does.
Of course, we ask her, well, where's your gun? I don't know where my gun is, were her words. What do you mean you don't know where your gun is? Your husband tells us it's always in your purse. I don't know, I haven't seen it in a while. She had body language that indicated that there was a lot of withholding of information. Eyes down a lot. If you didn't kill somebody, you would be very adamant to say, I did not, I'm not involved in this, but none of that behavior was displayed to us in any way.
The fact that they finally track Amber down and that she's stonewalling them, she's not being helpful in spite of, they know the relationship she had with Michael. So you have to ask yourself, why is she being so hesitant, so uncooperative? At this point, police really need to appeal to her innate emotional sensibilities. The person who once upon a time she had feelings for. The idea is to drill down into whatever humanity remains and try to get her talking that way.
Her silence was almost an admission to me. She knew something was going on. Based on timelines, I knew she had an alibi as far as not being there at the time of his death. But she knew something. She knew something about Michael's death.
Despite their suspicious behavior, Justin and Amber insist they left Tucson Thursday morning, well before Michael's estimated time of death.
They have an alibi. They were out of town. I get his parents' address and phone number. I talk to his stepdad and his mother. Yes, they were up there. We knew that we were possibly letting the killer go, but we didn't have the proof. We didn't have enough evidence. They had an alibi.
And the bad blows keep coming. DNA results from the burglar's genes come back. It's a chemical, not blood. The theory of a botched burglary must now be ruled out.
Where do you go next? It's always the most frustrating wall to hit at this point in the investigation, where you've had not only one, not only two, but now 3 red herrings.
We were all confused here at that point.
Just when they think the investigation has gone cold, detectives get the break they need.
The day after we let Justin and Amber go, Eli came to us.
Eli Curiel was Michael's best friend. He'd been out of town and only learned of the murder on the nightly news.
I was more than shocked. It was unbelievable to me. Michael had extremely good energy. He was a charismatic person. He was different than other yoga instructors, and that's what people liked about him. He was always a very cheerful guy, greeting everybody. And most of his class, the students were women. They loved Michael because he was so friendly, and he loved women too, so there was that perfect harmony. And he never missed any of his classes. Always there for everybody.
While attending a memorial service for Michael, Eli spoke with fellow members of the yoga community about the last time they saw their friend.
And they said, well, you know, he didn't show up for his yoga class on Thursdays, and he always shows up. He never misses classes. He didn't show up. I said, that's strange, because I just saw him the night before on Wednesday night. He said, well, you may have been the last person to see him because he didn't show up to any of his classes on Thursday.
If Michael was with Eli on Wednesday night and never showed up for yoga classes on Thursday, why was his body not found until Friday? What happened in those last 24 hours?
So this pocket of time we're talking about here is crucial.
Essentially, they need to go back to the drawing board and at the worst possible time.
After multiple dead ends, detectives get a promising new lead. A credible account of Michael's last hours.
It was customary for the students in this particular Wednesday night class to go to this local bar on 4th Avenue every week.
And there was maybe 5 or 6 of us from the class, including Amber, because Michael had invited Amber to come join us at the first bar. So we got there probably a little after 7.
Eli explained to us that it was common knowledge that Amber was married. Michael knew of this. She was willing to leave her husband for Michael. But according to Eli, Michael didn't want that type of relationship. He was happy with the way things were.
The more I got to know Michael and Amber, I could tell that they weren't what I would call a happy couple. I got the feeling that Michael was interested in the relationship purely from a physical standpoint, whereas I think Amber wanted something a little bit more.
Detectives ask Eli to describe their interactions on Wednesday night, the last time he saw Michael.
So we had our drinks, and I suggested that we go to another place. No one else wanted to go except Michael and Amber. As Michael walked with us to the door, he said, "See you later. I'll meet you at the bar," just like that. And Amber just looked shocked, like, "What, you're not gonna walk me to my car, or my truck?" He says, "No, I'll just see you there. I know where it's at." And she kind of was taken aback by that. She was very disappointed. And she is complaining and crying, saying, "Oh, Michael doesn't love me. He didn't walk me to my car." So we show up at the next place. We order up our drinks and everything seems fine. You know, Amber's not crying anymore and they seem like they're friendly again and they're chit-chatting and everything seems just great. Before too long, Amber started in on Michael, arguing with him, asking why he didn't walk her to her car, and so it started getting a little angry there. It was about 10-ish, and I knew that it was going to get ugly because I had seen what happened earlier with me. So I said, I'm out of here. I'm going to go home. I got to work the next day anyway because this is a Wednesday night.
Armed with new information about Amber and Michael's relationship, Detective Jimenez re-examines the timeline of Michael's death.
After interviewing Eli, I meet with the medical examiner. I tell the medical examiner the new facts, that the last time Michael was seen alive was late Wednesday night. Amber's leaving town on early Thursday morning, according to Amber and her boss, and according to Justin. So based on that, the medical examiner and I decide and discuss that it's very possible that Michael had gone into rigor mortis and had gone back out.
While uncommon, it's not unheard of for a body to go in and out of rigor mortis depending on the processes acting on the body. It can be significantly sped up when the body is in a warmer environment, in water. And in this case, we see when a body is outdoors in the heat. So when you have these fluctuations, it's in and it's out, it's a moving timeline.
It was that point in time when we realized and remembered that there was larva in Michael's eyes at the time we found him. And larva usually comes in after flies have laid their eggs, possibly a day later.
It's what's called forensic entomology, which is the study of insects and what insects burrow in and nest and reproduce in a dead body at what time. The fact that that was missed in this case is an initial disappointment.
So we're really deciding at this point that our timeline was off. We thought we had a fresh murder victim, and we did not. It was troubling in the sense that, you know, we never were wrong like that.
Detectives first thought Michael died late Thursday night, early Friday morning. Armed with this new information, they now believe that Michael was killed between 10:30 p.m. on Wednesday night and 3:30 a.m. on Thursday morning, a full 24 hours earlier.
The suspect pool, when your time of death is off by over 24 hours, immediately shifts. And in this case, we see it actually expand significantly because people who had been ruled out because of their alibis are now in play once again.
After our timeline shifted to the correct timeline, it was very consistent with Amber and Michael being together Wednesday night, early Thursday morning. And then we find him a day later on Friday. Michael's dead and laid on his porch for a full day.
Now we look at Amber and say, okay, she not only has motive, but now we know she had opportunity to kill him.
Detectives revisit the crime scene, looking for evidence to support their theory that Amber was the murderer.
You have to get pretty close to where the neighbor did in order to see Michael land there. Very likely that people had walked by that same area and just didn't look over there. The machine noises that the neighbor heard on Thursday from 2:30 to 4 p.m., he was hearing the automatic compressor go on and off. When it dropped down in pressure, it would automatically kick on and it would make that noise. So the neighbor assumed that Michael was in there doing his work.
Investigators determined that Michael's body could have easily been hidden from view for an entire day before it was found.
Well, all this stuff is going on. We get a phone call from Justin's stepfather in Sholo. He was a former police officer. And what he tells us is that Amber was very peculiar when she was up there all those days, those 3 days alone. She stayed in a guest house next door to their property, and he would see Amber taking walks. He'd never seen Amber take walks before, so he decided to kind of trace her steps as to where she went.
And he was walking around, he saw some rocks that were in the wrong place from where he'd left them, because it was a very meticulous landscaping job that this man had done. And so he looked in the rocks and he saw a gun.
It was a .38 caliber .357 revolver hidden in the dirt underneath the rocks. So at this point, we're thinking, we have what we need. We go out there and secure the weapon. There is still blood in the barrel of the weapon, which is somewhat common in close-range shots. We bring it back down to Tucson and we do immediate ballistics test on it. I was present when the ballistics test was done, along with a medical examiner. The test fire was very consistent and almost identical to the wound in Michael's forehead. It was really eerie. I'd never seen anything like that in my life, and the doctor as well. We were just really surprised by that. So based on the new timeline, I instructed officers to go find Amber.
So detectives finally have enough to go on. They're ready to arrest Amber. They know that she's the killer, but they have a major problem.
She's gone.
With their killer on the run, Tucson police put out a nationwide first-degree murder arrest warrant for Amber Trudell.
So now they have motive, they have the weapon, and they need the suspect. They need Amber.
Detectives soon discover Amber has fled clear across the country.
I contacted Amber's brother in Connecticut. Yes, she was there visiting. She traded in her truck for a red Blazer.
But Amber isn't in Connecticut anymore. Investigators suspect she's headed for her grandmother's residence in upstate New York, right on the border with Canada. U.S. Marshals move in.
That's when they found Amber. She was at her grandmother's house in New York.
Well, she almost got away with it.
She is packed up. She had thousands of dollars on her. So they felt that she was probably going to flee.
Ben and I both were very happy that she'd been caught before she got into Canada. She was extradited to Arizona and brought back to stand trial and to face justice.
Detectives now believe they know what happened to Michael Dehakus in the final 24 hours of his life. On Wednesday, September 24, 2003, Eli, Amber, and Michael met up at a bar.
That's when Amber started, she'd been drinking, and she was somewhat upset, almost crying that Michael didn't want to have the type of relationship that she wanted to. And Eli was telling Amber, well, you're married, and Michael's been married before. He doesn't want that type of relationship. Why don't you just leave things as it is? You guys get along really well, and Amber wanted more. So after they left the first bar, they all drove separate cars to the second bar, which was miles down the road. And it was around 10 o'clock at night when Eli left that bar.
Michael and Amber leave the bar at midnight and go back to Michael's house.
You have a fight that occurred in the kitchen. Amber throws a drinking glass at Michael. It misses and goes through the window. The drinking glass is found outside. There's a broken plate in the kitchen. It's all consistent with the domestic violence occurring there. There was some struggle. They had scratch marks on Michael's arm. She had a little mouse on her eye. I believe they're out on the front porch. She's about 2 to 3 feet away. She pulls out her gun and shoots him right in the forehead. It would make sense, the type of wound that we had, and he falls right there, and she leaves. She got home early Thursday morning. She was upset and drunk.
She tells her husband, Justin, that she's done something terrible and she needs to leave town now.
So Justin took her up to his parents' house in Show Low, which is about 4 hours north of Tucson.
On Thursday, Michael's body lays on the front stoop of his house for over 24 hours.
The neighbor was walking by and looked over and could see someone laying face up on the porch and called 911 immediately.
It'd be interesting to have a conversation with Amber to see what her motivation may be. In this scenario, I think that whatever she was looking for, she didn't get. She became enraged and then retaliated.
Amber could have gotten away with murder had they not figured out that the initial timeline had been off by a day.
Amber is convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to 13 years in prison.
I thought she should have been convicted of first-degree murder. To me, it'd be a cold-blooded murder because he was unarmed at that point.
I met and talked to one of Michael's daughters, and they weren't real happy with the 13-year sentence because after 13 years, she's free, and they still don't have their father.
While the sentence may not seem just, investigators succeed in putting Michael Dehakus' killer behind bars.
The timeline was the most important factor in this case once we were able to focus on it correctly. Now that it's all over with, I look back and I don't believe a mistake was made in any way because of what we were dealing with.
I know of only a handful of cases worldwide where the time of death has had to be changed to 24 hours, a full day prior to what was initially thought.
We felt that Eli broke the case for us because he had the most reliable information as to when the last time Michael was alive. Eli Curiel was probably the star in this case.
If I hadn't gone to the service or talked with friends, I wouldn't have known that I had a valuable part of the puzzle to give to the detective so he could solve the case.
I met the family and they were very, very appreciative of the fact that, you know, their killer was captured. It brings closure. I think, you know, closure is a little overrated. You know, how could you ever forget that you lost a loved one?
I have to make peace knowing that Michael is still okay. He's up there somewhere and smiling down on us and hoping that we'll meet again someday.
Wow, she's fighting. She's fighting for her life.
911 emergency. Karen's dead.
A savage murder.
It's something I'd never seen before, except maybe in a movie. It was eerie.
A crime of passion, crime of rage, and very improvised.
A dark mystery with multiple suspects.
He has a criminal history.
Is he lying? And if he is, why is he lying?
He was married, and she was going to say something to his wife. Could there be a possible motive there?
The truth will be revealed.
Time is telling us you were the last person to see her.
Who says that if they're innocent? Would you? No, I wouldn't.
Every day in North America, dozens of people are murdered. The key to solving the toughest of these homicides lies in the final 24 hours of the victim's life. To crack the case, detectives must reconstruct that critical timeline. The minutes and hours containing evidence that can help unlock the mystery and catch the killer. Oldsmar, Florida, a small southern town known as a great place to raise a family.
Oldsmar is a quiet community, about 15,000 residents. Some would describe it as a bedroom community.
Pretty much everybody knows everybody. It's kind of one of those areas where people talk to each other, everybody's friendly. There's not a lot of activity that you would consider to be suspicious.
Typically, in Oldsmar, you would deal with some property-type crimes.
Maybe burglaries, maybe some car thefts, but it's certainly not a hot spot where you expect there to be much violence.
Except on a pleasant Saturday morning, the quaint stability of Oldsmar is rocked by horror.
911, it's emergency. Please come. Send the police. What's going on there, sir? Karen's dead. Is that your wife? No, it's my girlfriend. It's what? My girlfriend. I just came over here and I found her. Please hurry. Please. Is this suspicious, sir? I would say so, yeah. I haven't touched anything. I opened the door and she's in the kitchen. And there's blood everywhere.
Tim Permentor was at his girlfriend's. He had found her dead in the house, and she was on the ground in a pool of blood.
The victim is 39-year-old Karen Pinnell, an airline customer service representative.
Karen was a very fun-loving person. She was always smiling, always laughing. But she wasn't afraid to speak her mind. She loved living in Florida. She loved the beach. She liked to fish. She, kind of had a set of friends that she spent most of her time with. So she was somebody that people enjoyed being around.
Veteran Detective Larry Nelvin and forensic science specialist Anna Cox are tasked with solving Karen's horrific murder. They start by surveying the outside of Karen's home.
There's a bird bath that was knocked over in the yard. There was a phone box that was open. The sliding glass door was open, and there was a safety pin from the sliding door was laying right on the carpet. It makes you think, was there a burglary? As you walk in the residence, you can see into the kitchen area. That is where Karen's body was. There were several sharp force injury wounds to her body and defensive wounds on her hands and arms, indicative of defense wounds, which when somebody is being stabbed or attacked with a knife, the common reaction that anybody's going to do is to defend yourself, to put your hands up, to try to stop it, to block it.
Karen sustained 16 stab wounds to her neck, chest, and heart, leading detectives to question whether her murder was staged to look like a burglary.
This is obviously a personal attack, somebody that was close to Karen. If this was a burglary gone bad, people typically do what they need to do to get away.
Whenever you see excessive violence at a crime scene, in particular stab wounds, 12 or more, if not sexual, is actually very personal. So you have a crime of passion, crime of rage, and very improvised.
This was over and over, multiple stab wounds to her. So this was somebody that was extremely upset, not somebody that got caught off guard and was startled. This was somebody that wanted Karen dead, and they made sure that they killed her.
To solve Karen's murder, Detective Nelvin and forensic specialist Cox will have to reconstruct the final 24 hours of Karen's life.
Timeline's extremely crucial. It allows us to put the victim in certain places at certain times. It allows us to put people of interest in certain places at certain times. So it's almost like it builds this diagram for you, and it puts this puzzle together.
Their investigation starts with analyzing the crime scene.
There is blood spatter on the cabinets. There's blood spatter on the door. And then I look closer at the door and I see these 3 letters that are just beautifully written in blood, ROC. They're all capitalized. They are all the same height and width, and they're located several inches off of the floor. And I think the most interesting thing about them is that they are completely uninterrupted. So it is almost as though somebody very deliberately and methodically wrote these letters.
Your first thought is this our murder suspect? Did Karen write rock on the wall so we would find it and know who had done this to her?
If she wrote it, I logically am thinking she had to write it with her fingers. So I began to look at her hands, and I noticed her left fingers did not have blood on the tips, but on her right hand, there's a little bit of blood on the tips of her fingers.
It's something I'd never seen before, except maybe in a movie or TV show. Whether it was really Karen writing that or not, or it was staged, it was eerie, either way, because clearly somebody was either trying to tell us that Rock did it or trying to blame Rock for something he didn't do.
As investigators search the crime scene, they uncover an important piece of physical evidence.
Also inside of Karen's residence is a pizza box, missing 3 pieces of pizza. There's a receipt which shows it was delivered at around 8:48 to her residence on Friday night. So that's a good indication that Karen was still alive at 8:48 when that pizza was delivered.
With the pizza receipt, detectives have an important anchor on their timeline and theorize that Karen was murdered sometime between 8:48 p.m. Friday and 10:30 the following morning.
So at this point, we know that Karen had pizza delivered to her residence on Friday at 8:48, and we know that Tim Permentor called 911 at 10:30 in the morning on Saturday when he discovered her body inside her residence.
Tim's involvement up to this point makes him the first person detectives want to talk to.
Tim reports this crime. He has to be considered a person of interest, A, because of the relationship. Intimacy is a risk factor for violence, period. So the fact that they're having a relationship makes him a suspect, but then added to that, he's also calling to report the crime. So that could also be viewed then as suspicious as well.
Detectives bring Tim into the sheriff's office for questioning.
He appeared to be upset, visibly emotional, and he was very cooperative and said he would, do whatever he could to help us figure out who had done this to Karen. Tim tells us that he met Karen about 3 months prior. He worked at a local car dealership, and then he actually leased her a vehicle. He said there was a connection there, and they became involved in a romantic relationship. He described their relationship as good. They were talking about maybe getting engaged. They were looking at some real estate to maybe find a place to live together.
Detectives start to dig into Tim's timeline.
Tim tells us that he went over to her house on Friday night at 7. He was delivering her this kitty calendar. And while he was there, she, at that point in time, makes a phone call to call her dad for his birthday. He left at 7:30 and went back to his apartment in Clearwater, where he has a roommate named George, and they played some video games. And at that point, George left to go to his girlfriend's up in Pasco County. And Tim told us that George's girlfriend, Vicky, actually told him to invite Tim to come up if he wanted to. Initially, Tim wasn't going to go, but he decided to go a short time later, around 9:30. He called and drove up into Pasco County. Tim then told us that he got up in the morning, left around 8 or 9 in the morning before anybody was up, tried calling Karen on his way back to his apartment. He was calling her cell phone, and he was calling her work. Couldn't get a hold of her. And that wasn't like her to not show up to work.
Karen had some health issues. She occasionally, I guess, would have blackouts. And so he was very concerned about her.
So he decides to drive over to her house. When he gets there, he sees her car in the driveway, which was even more concerning to him because he knew, obviously, she hadn't gone to work. So at that point, he walks up to the front of the residence, and he states that the front door is slightly ajar. So he pushes the door open, walks inside her residence, and he sees her lying on the floor. He said he started to retch because of what he saw, and he was so upset. He backed out of the residence and called 911.
But the more detectives interrogate Tim, the more questions they have.
He said he didn't go near her body, even though the 911 dispatcher asked him to go check, and he refused to go close to her body.
She was a loved one that he was concerned about, that he went over specifically thinking that she might have blacked out or something. You would expect him to go up to check her body.
His behavior raises a red flag for detectives, but nonetheless, Tim continues to cooperate with the investigation.
Tim consents to us taking fingernail swabbings and scrapings. We're taking a buccal swab for DNA. We're taking his clothing, and we're taking photographs of him.
But despite their suspicions, when detectives look into Tim's alibi, everything checks out.
Everything with Tim's friend, George, said happened. It seemed to confirm the story that Tim had initially told them.
Detectives then ask Tim if there's anyone he knows who would want to hurt Karen.
He tells us about a previous relationship that Karen was involved in with the subject named Rock. And he initially said, you spell it like rock. However, then he stated to us, no, it's kind of like a mythical spelling, it's R-O-C. He didn't indicate that he saw Rock on the wall. He just told us about this relationship with Rock, which he described as violent, and that he had been in trouble before for some domestic stuff with her.
There's a reason the word Rock was written on the door. It's because she has a boyfriend named Rock, and that's exactly how you spell it. And I was like, really? Get out. At this point, I'm thinking to myself, Rock is possibly the one that murdered her.
Detectives have zeroed in on a prime suspect in Karen Pennell's murder, a violent ex-boyfriend named Rock.
Tim described Rock as a drug user. He didn't like the guy, didn't think there was anything good about him.
Anxious to help detectives find Karen's killer, Tim provides as much information as he can about her ex.
Tim further tells us that Rock was still calling Karen once in a while because he had a roll-top desk that was still at her residence. Tim felt that Rock would come by her once in a while when he would have something of his that was there and not get everything in order to have a reason to call her to come back again. I definitely kind of cued in on that, and now I know that we have to establish a timeline for Rock.
Rock is an obvious suspect. You have somebody who it's alleged and documented that there is a history of domestic violence here. We know that this is an estranged relationship, so it doesn't take much to make the link that perhaps he could have acted in an aggressive manner and killed Karen. Maybe there's some sort of motivation in terms of him wanting to rekindle the relationship, or maybe he wants something that he had given her back. Sometimes there's other sorts of feuds underlying these things as well.
Rock's alleged violent tendencies are an important clue for detectives in locating him.
We were able to find a report from our agency back in 2002 where there was a family trouble at Karen's residence there, where her and Rock had gotten into a fight, and he had left, and when he came back, she had locked the door and wouldn't let him in, and he was banging on the door. Karen was scared.
The police report helps detectives track Rock down. He's in Northport, Florida, a 90-minute drive from Oldsmar.
We were there to kind of catch him off guard, so we surprised Rock at his residence. He was a little standoffish with us, but we introduce ourselves to him, and we tell him we're investigating the death of Karen Pennell.
Detectives proceed to question Rock about his relationship with his former girlfriend.
Rock described the relationship he had with Karen as kind of, not a really good one. He was over the relationship. He had his new girlfriend that he was living with now that I believe they might have been engaged. So he was happy with his life and where it was.
Detectives then confront Rock about the accusation that he had repeatedly been harassing Karen over furniture she had of his.
He's reaching out to Karen, trying to get this roll-top desk back. His explanation was that it wasn't a big deal and that he was done at that point.
When someone's confronted with evidence that suggests they may be at the crime scene or they may be guilty, it's very interesting to people involved to see how this suspect responds. Do they have a plausible explanation for this? Do they react in a defensive manner? These are all very important reactions and all mean different things.
And then detectives drop a bombshell on Rock.
He was really taken back when we told him that his name had been written in blood on the wall at our house. He was startled and shocked and kind of pissed as to who would try to frame me for the murder of somebody, of an ex-girlfriend. So that was very unnerving for him.
Sometimes killers want to be found, or at least they want sort of the notoriety that comes with being a killer. It's possible that a killer leaving a clue, like writing their name on the wall, might take some joy from watching police try to catch them. They might be toying with police.
Not satisfied with his claims of innocence, detectives ask Rock point blank whether he killed Karen.
He does tell us that, you know, he has a criminal history, but he says, I had nothing to do with the murder of Karen. We were also aware of the fact that he did live at her place previously. And again, the fact that it's staged to look like there was a burglary. You know, and Rock would be familiar with the area. He knew where the safety pin was on the sliding glass door. He knew about the bird bath, the phone box. It makes you wonder.
Detectives try to pin Rock down on where he was during the time they believe Karen was murdered.
So Rock was explaining to us his timeline on Friday about coming home from work around 6, 7 o'clock that night. They were up till about midnight or so, having some drinks at the house. And they both went to bed together, and they both woke up together around 9:30 Saturday morning. We were able to speak with his girlfriend, who he lived with, and she had a younger son. She said that he was with them on Friday and was there Saturday as well. So at this point, we know a couple things. We know that Rock is a controlling and dark and violent person. And maybe his girlfriend and her son are afraid of him. So, you know, could there be a possible cover-up?
The question authorities always have to ask whenever a significant other or a partner alibis out the other half is, are they just doing this to protect them? Are they covering for them? Are they complicit in the scheme themselves? You can't just take a person at their word. It needs to be fact-checked.
Despite the fact that Rock's girlfriend was home, the timeline shows he still had the opportunity to murder Karen between 8:48 p.m. and 10:30 a.m. the next morning.
So now I'm immediately thinking, is he lying? And if he is, why is he lying? Is he lying because he was the last person to see her? Because he was the one that murdered her?
Detectives have their sights on Karen Pinnell's ex-boyfriend Rock as her possible killer. But they don't have any physical evidence to connect him to the crime, so they put his alibi to the test.
Initially, when we're having a conversation or interviewing somebody, you know, you're just trying to really get their timeline. And then what you do is you go back to try to see if there's discrepancies in it.
When the police were conducting their investigation, they started to pull some of the information from cell phone towers.
Detectives are hoping Rock's cell phone activity will provide useful information, but what they discover is surprising.
They were able to confirm that Rock was at home with his family, and there was nothing that would indicate any telltale, or any clues that would indicate that he was not there. And his story is corroborated by other people. So he was eliminated as being a suspect.
The fact that in this case, the victim's sort of dying act seems to have been writing her killer's name in blood This is one of those clues that you never get, and when it shows up in this case, police are obviously going all in on this lead. And the fact that it doesn't seem to be panning out, at some point you need to question, is this a misdirect? Is this name being offered as a red herring? Is he basically being framed?
To find her killer, detectives refocus their investigation by examining Karen's cell phone and text records.
So we see this text message, which is kind of like a loving text message, flirtatious text message from somebody in there is built as like pilot. We're able to identify who that person is. We're able to track him down. He was a little bit hesitant at first to talk because he was married. When you have a subject that she has a casual romantic relationship with, and you learn that he's married, that obviously makes you think, could there be a possible motive there? Was there something going on and she was going to say something to his wife? And he knew that, so he wanted to get rid of that and eliminate that problem.
People will go to all kinds of lengths to keep their illicit trysts and affairs a secret, so that there's no cross-pollination between their two lives. But this inevitably complicates investigations when you realize that what seemed to be a straightforward life is actually a spider web with suspects all over the place. And whenever some kind of secret relationship is revealed, they're naturally going to be a strong person of interest, the same as the known intimate partner, the husband, the wife, the boyfriend, the girlfriend would be. In fact, it actually elevates them, given that they are sharing a mutual secret, and with that often comes an additional motive.
Detectives ask the pilot about his relationship with Karen.
He says that, yeah, he dated her from time to time, but it was a casual romantic relationship. And then he tells us that he was flying the day before Karen's murder, and we have a hotel receipt as well from him. So we were able to very quickly eliminate him as being a suspect based on flight records and based on hotel records of where he was, completely out of the country altogether.
Detectives still believe that Karen's personal life is the key to solving her murder. Searching for new leads, they interview her friend and coworker, Catherine.
So we learned from Catherine that Karen was in the process of trying to get more alimony from her ex-husband, Jeff. That's obviously something we need to look into, because there are times when people, get very upset if you're trying to take something from them, specifically money.
Money, they say, is the root of all evil. And sadly, a jilted ex-spouse, rather than part with their money, would rather actually kill the person who they once married. And to them, in their mind, that's an appropriate trade-off.
Detectives haul Jeff, Karen's ex-husband, down to the station for questioning.
Jeff described their marriage as a good marriage. However, he said there were occasions when she could be not so nice if she had been drinking. And that is probably the reason why their marriage ended.
Detectives asked Jeff about Karen's requests for more alimony.
He said he wasn't harboring any bad feelings towards her at all. He had indicated he had contact with her. However, at this point was done with whatever was there and with her.
Detectives are not convinced that Jeff is being truthful, taking note of his overly comfortable demeanor with respect to the end of his marriage and his ex-wife's requests for more money.
Karen has moved on, is dating other people. Should he wish to have her back, so to speak, this can be a real problem. The whole idea that maybe Jeff was being asked for more financial support, plus the idea that as these things combine, you have increased provocations that lead you to feel more and more resentment over time, could also increase emotion and lead to potential violence.
Greed and money plus jealousy, that's a very dangerous concoction.
Detectives questioned Jeff about his whereabouts during the window of time that Karen was killed.
He said he was down actually in Miami, 4.5 hours away on a diving excursion with friends. All of that was able to be corroborated. Hotel receipts were able to be corroborated, receipts from the dive shop and so forth. Confirmed that he, in fact, was out of town. We were able to establish very strong, solid timeline and alibi for him. to know that he wasn't the one responsible for her murder.
With Jeff ruled out as a suspect, the investigation into Karen Pennell's murder hits a wall.
When you have a small town like Oldsmar, you do have that dynamic when a violent crime occurs where people really are scared. They are not used to this. They don't understand how this could happen. It's all very confusing. So there is that extra pressure to try to not only solve the crime, but to put the community at ease, which is difficult to do when all you can say to the community is, I can't tell you anything because I don't have anything to tell you.
But detectives finally catch a break when the blood analysis results come in.
I remember there was blood spatter all over the wall, on the cabinets, on the door. And one of the questions being presented to me was, how long would it have taken for the spatter to dry before the letters ROC were written on the door? And my conclusion was that the spatter was already dry upon the time which ROC was written. And the reason I could confirm that is A, microscopically, there was no disruption to the spatter stains. They weren't wiped away, they weren't smeared, they weren't distorted. Well, then I had to figure out a time frame. So it was several minutes after spatter had been deposited that the word rock was written. And she sustained severe injuries to major organs, like major functioning organs in her body that would have pretty significantly caused her to be incapacitated and unable to sustain life for several minutes. So you have to assume that an individual who's dying is able to write that word in such a perfect nature. None of that makes any sense. None of it.
There's no way, even had she been alive after the initial attack, one, she wouldn't have been in a condition to write. Two, she would have had to lay there and wait probably an hour or two before she decided to try to write down the wall.
She didn't write this. Somebody else wrote this. Somebody else intended to manipulate this crime scene and try to send all of us on some crazy whirlwind of an investigation, and it's not gonna happen.
Detectives confirm a key piece of forensic evidence in the murder of Karen Pennell. It wasn't Karen who wrote the name Rock on the wall.
So at that point, it was a good moment for us in our investigation because it narrows our focus down to people that are intimate with Karen that would know about this relationship we had with Rock.
Detectives catch another break when Karen's autopsy results come in.
We learned that her stomach was empty of any food, which was interesting because we knew there was pizza delivered to her residence, and we know there's 3 pieces missing. Well, she didn't eat them. So who ate them?
In the hope of finding answers, detectives track down the pizza delivery guy.
So we find the delivery driver and talk with him. And he very vividly remembers delivering the pizza to Karen's house. He described her as an attractive female that he delivered the pizza to. He had a bit of an accent, and she commented on his accent. So they were having this casual conversation in the front porch area of her residence, and he remembered a gentleman being there, standing in the background inside. And he said he thinks that he upset him because as they were having this conversation, maybe it was a little bit flirtatious, and he said this subject kept passing back and forth in the background, looking at him. He took it as if he was needed to stop having a conversation with her and leave. And that's how he described it to us. So that to me is a very big revelation in this investigation.
Detectives need to identify the mystery man who was with Karen on the night she was killed. They're hoping there could be fingerprints on the pizza box and direct forensics to go down this road in their analysis.
I'm looking for some type of indication of even a partial fingerprint.
While detectives wait for the fingerprint analysis, They uncover more details about the nature of Karen's relationship with Tim Permentor, her boyfriend at the time of her death.
During our investigation, we're going through our records. We see a report where a couple weeks prior, she had called 911 and hung up. So the deputy goes to her residence for a 911 hang-up call. And it's determined that Tim had come to her house. She called 911 and he left.
Detectives track down the responding officer, and what they learn next blows the case wide open.
The deputy did a criminal history check on Tim and saw that he was out on probation and he had done 12 years in state prison for attempted murder. So he took it upon himself, because it was a public record, and because she had called 911, he informed Karen of this and about his history and that it was for attempted murder.
It's clear that Tim was quite accomplished at leading a double life. He had convinced Karen to be with him, and yet he had this whole other past that she rightly would have been quite concerned about. I think she would have felt betrayed, and Karen may have confronted him about it, and he was upset about it.
So it was all pointing in this big, huge arrow straight at Tim.
Detectives dig deeper into Tim's background.
So we learned that Tim had been involved in an escort business in Gainesville area and the Tallahassee area. We learned that back in 1990, he was convicted for attempted first-degree murder and kidnapping, which involved an escort and involved him also trying to take out this competitor.
Detectives have Tim Permentor in their crosshairs and haul him back into the station for questioning.
So as we're talking with Tim, we asked if Karen knew about his prison stay, and he told us that he had disclosed that to her at the beginning of a relationship because he indicated she had to get over that. It took her a little bit of time to get over his past. But he told us Karen was okay with it because they stayed in a relationship and she stayed with him.
We know from the 911 call made about a week prior to her death that she realizes that she's been lied to by Tim this whole time. And the cops who attend on that evening tip her off to the fact that he's a known felon.
Detectives theorize that Tim Permentor is the murderer, but without physical evidence, they can't prove it.
A lot of pressure is put on us by ourselves because we want to bring closure to this. We want to, one, take a murderer off the street. Two, we want to get closure for the family. What's happened to their family member, their loved one, their friend has happened. We can't change that. But it's salt in the wound if you can't bring closure to it.
Here's a case where Tim is a guy who's been living a lie his whole life. He's dabbled in all sorts of crime, criminal versatility being a good marker of psychopathy in most cases. So you know you're not necessarily going to get a confession from him. He's not going to cooperate. It'll be one lie after another. So at that point, you really need to focus on what forensic science can tell you, because forensic science doesn't lie.
Detectives have zeroed in on Tim Permentor as the prime suspect in Karen Pennell's murder.
We have him go over his timeline again, and he regurgitates what he told us the first time.
Tim sticks to his story that he was with his friend George and George's girlfriend at her place in Pasco County on the night of the murder.
But when we really start pressing him, his demeanor changes. He's kind of just this blank look on his face, this stoic, almost dark, a little less open and closed off and short. So at that point in time, he told us he wanted a lawyer, and we placed him under arrest for the violation of probation because he was up in Pasco County, and we're able to get him held in the jail while we continued pushing forward.
While Tim is locked up, detectives receive the results from the fingerprint analysis on the pizza box, and the findings are explosive.
They were able to positively identify a fingerprint on the pizza box as belonging to Tim Permentor. That was huge at that point. Tim had told us he had left that location at 7:30. We know for a fact that he was there at least up until 8:48 p.m. that night. So There's a big problem with that. Specifically, he didn't mention that he was still there beyond 7:30. He said he was, at that time, playing video games with his roommate and then preparing to drive up to Pasco County, when in fact we know he was still at Karen's.
You can't change that. It is what it is. You can't say that you left at 7:30 and the pizza was delivered after 8:30 and your prints are on the box. The timestamp on that receipt directly contradicts the crux of your story. Forensically, time is telling us you were the last person to see her.
But detectives still need more evidence to verify their case. Tim's cell phone records are the last piece of the puzzle.
Once we received all the cell tower information, it again destroyed his timeline and his alibi. We know he was there when the pizza was delivered by his fingerprint and by the delivery guy at 8:48. And now we know he was there at about 9:30. When he says he's calling George from his apartment to head up to Pasco, he's calling George from Karen's house because the cell tower it's hitting on is directly north of her location. So we have him at her house at least up till 9:30. Which was probably right after he murdered Karen, and he was trying to figure out what he's going to do and how he's going to handle this.
Detectives present Tim with the mountain of evidence they have against him, hoping it will compel him to confess.
She got pizza delivered shortly after 8:30. We know you were there at probably 8:30, 8:35, up until around 9:30. And that's also the time frame in which she had died. I couldn't have been there that long. Is there any reason that there would be blood on your shirt from her? I don't know how, but that blood is on my shirt. I didn't kill Karen. I wasn't there, but it doesn't matter. So just do me a favor and call my sister so she can come pick up my car, take me to county, because that's where I'm going right now anyway. Anyway, and the minute I saw the body, I should have run.
So who says that if they're innocent? Would you? No, I wouldn't. I would fight it the whole entire time. So he's somewhat giving up without admitting to it. But we've already started building our case against him, and we've attacked his timeline. His credibility is shot. We have him there based on the delivery of the pizza. And based on those statements that he makes, we know we have our guy. I promise you that.
Detectives are now able to piece together what happened during the final 24 hours of Karen's life.
Karen left work on Friday around 6, stopped at a grocery store around 6:30, and then went home. We know that Tim was over there at least once. He indicates 7 to 7:30. But we also know that he was back at his apartment at 8 when George left. The pizza was delivered at 8:48 to Karen's house, and we know from the pizza delivery guy that Tim was there because he saw him there and upset him. We also know that Tim was there because his fingerprint was on the pizza box. So that gives a catalyst as to what might have started this argument at their residence that night. And the relationship is not going the way he wants it. She's trying to get out of that relationship. You get this guy that delivers pizza, she starts having this, what he perceived as probably a flirtatious conversation, which pissed him off, and that was obvious from the delivery guy, I could see that. And of course, at that point in time, he's a narcissist, he's controlling, and he's gonna decide whether it's done or not, and he realizes she's getting rid of me, I can't have her. He doesn't want anybody else to, and he's pissed. So he goes into this fit of rage and stabbed her 15, 16 times to make sure that she was dead.
Tim then tries to frame Karen's ex-boyfriend, Rock, by writing his name in blood on the wall.
At 9:30, Tim calls George, and we know that he calls her from Karen's house. We know that around 10:40, he arrives up in Pasco County where George meets him at a gas station, and Tim then follows George to his girlfriend's house.
But why did Tim's friend George lie about an alibi for him?
Ultimately, we learned that he confessed to George that night. But George was scared. I think he's looking at a guy that's been in prison once for attempted murder and now just told him that he stabbed his girlfriend to death. He's scared of that guy, and he's scared that if he does say something, that he'll come after him, his girlfriend, or the kids.
Tim ticks a number of boxes in terms of criminal psychopath behavior. We see it in his previous exploits, we see it in his relationship, we see it with his attempts to frame Rock, and we see it most notably in that after brutally murdering his girlfriend, he gets the munchies and has to help himself to a pizza that's on the counter. It shows you just how cold and calculated he is.
On October 24, 2007, Tim Permentor is convicted of the first-degree murder of his girlfriend, Karen Pennell. He is sentenced to life without parole.
By grieving for Karen Pennell in this case, I allow myself to feel bad, and I allow myself to be angry, and I allow myself to be confused because none of it makes any sense. And at the end of the day, you murdered her because she broke up with you. There's never a good reason for murder, but that's one of the worst. I don't get it.
With all homicide cases, a good ending, I guess, is putting the person that's responsible in prison for it. But it doesn't change what happened. You can't bring their loved one back. This family lost Karen, their daughter, their little sister, you know, who was a good person that everybody loved her.
There was a clear bullet hole on the right side of his temple. Next to him is an unknown person, and I can just see the blood pouring out of his head. Just the worst thing I've ever seen.
A shocking double homicide.
It'd been 25 years since we had a homicide. This was something totally new to us. We weren't expecting it.
A small-town mystery with multiple suspects.
Was the person paranoid and thought an affair was going on?
Sometimes people have very extreme beliefs, and that can lead to violence.
In a letter that they send out, they threaten death.
The truth will be revealed.
The only person that would know this information is the shooter. That is our killer.
Every day in North America, dozens of people are murdered. The key to solving the toughest of these homicides lies in the final 24 hours of the victim's life. To crack the case, detectives must reconstruct that critical timeline. The minutes and hours containing evidence that can help unlock the mystery and catch the killer. Hudson, Wisconsin, a small, sleepy town on the western edge of the state, bordering the scenic St. Croix River.
Hudson's a small bedroom community. It's kind of a town where everybody knows everybody. People are comfortable with leaving their cars unlocked. They're comfortable with leaving their doors open.
Hudson is also home to the annual Pepperfest.
In the 1950s, there was a large Italian population, and that was the origin of the Pepperfest.
There's a pepper eating contest, pound of peppers, and if you can do it in about 10 to 15 seconds, you're doing pretty good. There's a Pepperfest royalty. They have a queen, several princesses, and a king.
But on a cold February afternoon, police receive a 911 call that shatters the innocence of this close-knit community forever.
I'll never forget the 911 call. It came in at about 1:40 p.m., and The dispatcher said that there was a shooting at the O'Connell Funeral Home. There are 2 bodies that have been shot.
The response from law enforcement is swift. Police, ambulances, helicopters, and a SWAT team all descend on the funeral home.
So we had all hands on deck coming to assist because this is a type of call that nobody ever heard over the police radio. It'd been 25 years since we had a homicide in Hudson. This was something totally new to us. We weren't expecting it.
Detectives find the bodies of 39-year-old Dan O'Connell, a funeral home director, and 22-year-old James Ellison, his intern.
Dan O'Connell was one of the most friendly, outgoing, energetic, loving people you could ever meet. He was involved in everything. He was a former North Hudson Pepper King. Everybody loved Dan O'Connell. He was just a stellar individual.
Dan was my soulmate, the love of my life. We were the best of friends, besides being lifelong partners and parents. He was just always compassionate. He could make everybody feel comfortable.
James Ellison was a 22-year-old student who always dreamed about being a funeral director. James had a longtime girlfriend, high school sweetheart, and they had planned on getting married. And he picked O'Connell Funeral Home because he thought, hey, I want to learn from the best.
Tasked with solving the brutal double homicide of Dan O'Connell and James Ellison is rookie detective Sean Petit.
You have to prepare yourself mentally. How am I going to balance my emotions with what I need to get done? In my mind, this is a close personal friend that's murdered. It's time to take a deep breath and look at the big picture. I have to fix this somehow. I owe the family.
In the case of a double murder, you have to do everything twice. There are 2 bodies, there are 2 autopsies, there are 2 victimology workups. It increases everything twofold.
Detectives begin their investigation by surveying the crime scene.
Dan is an obvious bullet hole to his head. And next to him is James, hunched over, and he's bleeding, and I can just see the blood pouring out of his head. Obviously deceased as well. Both of them, their colors were gone. I've seen a lot of death. I've seen a lot of suicides. I've seen a lot of gunshot wounds, but this was different.
Investigators look for clues to help establish the time of death and a possible motive.
Because the blood was still running down the walls, we knew that this was a relatively fresh crime. We received the call at 1:40 p.m., and we determined that it probably happened within the past 2 hours, so somewhere between 11:40 a.m. and 1:40 p.m. The first question I asked myself was, is this a robbery that went bad? But the office was basically undisturbed. The landline was still in the cradle. There was nothing that appeared out of place in there, no signs of a struggle. And James clearly had his wallet in his left pocket. It was in plain view. So in my mind, I'm thinking, this is something far beyond a robbery gone bad. The bullets were recovered and sent to a crime lab, and we determined that they came from a 9mm weapon. The shell casings that were found on the ground actually told us a lot about the crime scene. We believe that our killer walked into the office, walked right over to the desk, and as Dan is pushing up, getting up off the chair, probably gonna say, now wait a minute, suspect's got a gun, and fires one and hits him right in the head. It appeared that James walked in, saw Dan deceased, and started walking behind the desk over to see him. Then all of a sudden he hears a gunshot, and he dropped his papers and went into a defensive mode. And that's when the third shot came, hit him in the pinky, went through his head, and out his head and into the wall. So now we believe that Dan was shot first and was most likely the original target. James just happened to be an innocent bystander, and he had to be killed because he was a witness. Whoever did this went right in with the sole purpose that I'm going to kill Dan. He didn't have a chance to defend himself. He didn't have a chance to say anything. He just was murdered point blank.
To catch Dan's killer, detectives will need to unravel the final 24 hours of his life.
Now I'm looking at Dan and saying, okay, wait a minute. What did he do wrong? Is somebody that angry that they're gonna kill him?
The first person detectives look at is Dan's widow, Jenny.
As unlikely, as unfathomable as it would seem that a small-town housewife could be capable of carrying out this type of brutal crime, you have to start with the significant other.
One of the toughest things for me is to have to go and ask a lot of the hard questions. I know I have to get personal with Jenny. I need to find out what's going on. What do you know? Are you involved?
Everyone knows that the first person you think of is the spouse. You know, that's who did it. And so I knew that I was #1 suspect.
I had to ask Jenny, was there any extramarital affairs? And I assured her that I wasn't going to pass judgment on either one of them. But we had to find out. She said they were happily married, in love. Then I asked her about the life insurance policies. Is she going to benefit hugely with Dan being gone? Is there a motive for her to want him dead? People do things for money. Money talks. It's the power of greed. But she said that life insurance policy was not an extensive amount, nor was it to be paid out immediately. So we didn't believe it was a life insurance issue.
Detectives asked Jenny where she was during the time they believe Dan and James were killed.
This starts the timeline for me. Jenny said that about 7:40 a.m. Dan left for a meeting in Baldwin, Wisconsin. Jenny stayed home until she brought the kids to school about 8 o'clock to 8:15. Because her son's birthday was coming up, she spent the entire morning and afternoon preparing the house for the guests for the birthday party. She told me that she received a phone call from a friend advising her that there was some type of incident at the funeral home. She immediately stopped what she was doing and drove directly to the funeral home. We checked Jenny's alibi, and it was confirmed by friends and neighbors that she was where she said she was.
With Jenny ruled out as a suspect, detectives ask if she knows of anyone who would want to hurt Dan.
I racked my brains because nobody disliked him. Nobody talked bad about him. I had no scenarios going through my head. I had no clue.
Working to fill out Dan's timeline, detectives asked Jenny where Dan was going when he left the house the morning of his death. She tells them he was headed to a meeting with his business partner and brother, Mike.
Now that we've cleared Jenny, we have to take a look at Mike. Mike is operating a funeral home in Baldwin. Dan's operating one in Hudson. Are they arguing? Are they complaining? Is there any kind of hardship between the two of them?
The other scenario to consider is his brother. And while that seems also very unlikely, factor in that they have potentially competing business interests. Once again, things boil down to money more often than not.
Mike agrees to meet in my office, and I ask him, is there any kind of problems between you guys? Mike informed me that both funeral homes were doing very well. There was no financial hardships on either Dan or Mike. In fact, knowing both of them, you couldn't find a closer combination of brothers there. Those two were as tight as a drum.
Detectives ask Mike where he was during the critical time they believe Dan and James were killed.
Mike and Dan were together between 8 o'clock in the morning and 9. Mike did subsequently leave to run some errands in Hudson, and Mike got back to the funeral home in Baldwin about 11:30 a.m., which was confirmed by his secretary. We know that Mike stayed at the funeral home from 11:30 until the time he was notified of the shooting.
With Mike ruled out as a person of interest, detectives turn back to the crime scene, looking for new clues.
We find a calendar in the office, and what was unique about it was there was an appointment at 1 o'clock that Dan had, for whatever reason, bumped back to 2 o'clock. So what is so important that he had to bump that back? Clearly, he has another meeting with somebody that he has to get taken care of right away. Now we need to figure out who Dan was meeting at 1 o'clock, because that is more than likely our killer.
Detectives are working the theory that the person Dan had a 1 p.m. appointment with on the day he was murdered could be his killer. In an attempt to find out who that is, they interview his colleagues.
Dan and the family had a close relationship with St. Pat's, the Catholic Church in Hudson. Father Ryan Ericson was one of the priests at St. Pat's, and because of the funeral home business, they had a working and personal relationship with Ryan Ericson.
Investigators hope that Father Ericson can help them figure out who Dan's 1 p.m. appointment was with.
Father Ericson knew Dan very well. He considered him a friend. They worked a lot of funerals together. I asked him, hey, what do you think happened? Tell me what you know.
Then I heard rumors too. Again, these are rumors, you go up to a bowling alley, you hear lots of rumors from people, especially when they start drinking a little bit. And, you hear things like, oh yeah, their marriage was rotten.
Father Ericson suggests that Dan might be having an affair with his secretary, Bonnie.
Dan and Bonnie worked very close together. They did a lot together. There were conferences that the two had to attend. So we need to look, hey, is there an affair going on here? Could Bonnie's husband, Dwayne, be involved? Did he find something out?
Jealousy is always a motivator for homicide, especially when there's affairs or infidelity. It can induce hostility that can cause people to act in ways that they ordinarily wouldn't.
Working the theory that Dan O'Connell may have been killed by a jealous husband, detectives bring Dwayne down to the station for questioning.
Dwayne was standoffish. It appeared to me that he was hiding something, that he knew more. I asked Dwayne if he was a jealous husband. He said he did not like the fact that Bonnie had to go to these events with Dan. He thought, you know what, Dan, go by yourself. She needs to be home with the family, with the kids, with me. So he had a little bit of jealousy that she was going on these events with Dan.
Suspicious of Dwayne, they ask him for his alibi on the day Dan was killed.
He's a dairy farmer. And he said, just like every other morning, I get up and I start milking at 5 a.m. After he was done milking, he continued doing chores. About 12 o'clock, he borrowed a friend's truck to run to a supply store. We were able to confirm the fact that he did borrow the truck, and he did return it at approximately 1 o'clock p.m.
Dwayne says he then stayed on the farm because he had a meeting scheduled there at 2 o'clock.
So now we know that he dropped the truck off at 1 o'clock and had a meeting at 2 o'clock. So that gives him a 1 hour window to kill Dan. We know that the homicides occurred somewhere before 1:40 p.m. It's 30 minutes from his farm to the funeral home. It would be almost impossible for him to drive from Baldwin to Hudson, kill 2 people, get back in his vehicle, and get back in the time frame that is basically unaccounted for. We now have to rule Dwayne out because of the time frame. And now we start over from square one. Where do we go from here? We have nothing, absolutely nothing.
With the investigation hitting a wall, detectives examine the victim's phone records, looking for new clues.
We want to get a tighter timeline. At 1:07, Dan calls an engraving company. Then at 1:22, a call is placed to James's cell phone, but it goes unanswered. So somewhere between 1:07 and 1:22 is what we believe was the time of the crime.
Having narrowed down Dan's time of death to between 1:07 and 1:22 p.m., investigators attend his funeral, looking for new leads that could point to his killer.
I've always advocated that police investigators attend the funeral discreetly, because a suspect, if they attend the funeral, and they frequently will, are there to monitor the investigation. Often their behavior will give them away. They're either too over the top or they're too underwhelmed. Either way, it will stand out and it will help you narrow your suspect pool.
The funeral was held in the Catholic Church, and it was standing room only. Hundreds of people standing outside of the church.
It was just amazing how many people came. It was just breathtaking that he had touched that many people. And people would say, you met Dan O'Connell once, you were his best friend for life. That's how he made you feel.
So here I am, mourning the loss of my friend, my colleague, yet still keeping my eyes and ears open because this case isn't solved. We have nobody. We actually had undercover officers canvass the area, and we ran license plate checks on every single vehicle. Hundreds of vehicles.
But investigators leave the funeral empty-handed.
We have no leads. It's gonna go cold. And the frustrating part is, I'm not ready to be done, but I don't have anywhere else to go.
As the case stalls, the FBI contacts them with a surprising new lead.
About a month into the investigation, our department received a call from the FBI stating that there's a religious group about an hour and a half east of Hudson called the Rest of Jesus Ministries. And it's kind of a radical group that is against the embalming of bodies. The Rest of Jesus Ministries believe that the body should be wrapped in a shroud and shown as is.
When detectives look into the organization, they learn something alarming.
They sent out over 400 letters to funeral homes in the community or in the area. And in a letter, they threatened death.
Based upon that pamphlet, we looked at it as a possible motive for a killing.
This changes everything.
Detectives are working a new theory that a religious cult may have targeted Dan O'Connell for betraying their beliefs.
The letters appeared threatening in nature, and that is a red flag to me.
Pickling of the body by the draining of the blood is an abomination to me, and this practice must cease. Failure to comply will bring a judgment of much death upon this land.
When I read that letter, I'm thinking this is a radical group that would do almost anything to get their point across. They distributed over 400 pamphlets to various funeral homes, and our department wanted to know if the Hudson Funeral Home, and in particular Dan O'Connell, received a letter from the Rest of Jesus Ministries.
Detectives run a background check on the group's leader, Catherine Padilla.
We found out that she had been arrested twice for disorderly conduct and 2 counts of stalking. To me, she potentially has a motive to commit such crime based upon her past history.
Catherine immediately jumps out in my mind as a viable suspect in that we have this strange ideological fixation, even an obsession. She's part of this anti-embalming cult. And then she has a history of stalker-like behavior. Combine those things, you're talking about someone very obsessive, very committed, someone who can act then very dangerously.
Believing Catherine Padilla could be responsible for a double homicide, detectives traveled to Augusta, Wisconsin to interrogate her.
What we learned from her is that she is the prophet of approximately 25 people consisting of adults and children. She holds these little gatherings at her home every Saturday and talks about biblical scriptures, and she speaks in tongues. To me, that's very odd.
And oftentimes, cult leaders are very charismatic. They draw followers to them. They can influence them into doing what they want. In popular terms, we might call this brainwashing or mind control. But really what it is a coercive process where people manipulate and exploit others to do what they want. Sometimes that ends in violence.
When investigators confront Catherine with the threatening letters she sent to funeral directors, she has a quick answer.
She just said it was simply an expression of her religious belief and that she isn't going to harm anybody. It's taken out of context.
Suspecting Catherine is lying to them, detectives carry out a search warrant of her home.
We did do a search warrant at Catherine's apartment and seized several documents, including a letter that said, "Prepare for war." As alarming as it sounds, we couldn't find anything to tie her to Dan O'Connell. We asked her where she was on the day of the homicide. She said she was at home giving a sermon. We were able to determine, based upon other interviews, that indeed her time was accounted for several hundred miles away from Hudson.
Having ruled out yet another suspect, leads dry up and the case goes cold.
Waiting for this to come to a conclusion was the worst. It's the looking over your shoulder, you know. I mean, they're gonna come after me and my kids. And looking at people differently. Who are my friends? Who can I trust? Do I know this person really? Do I really know who you are? Did you have anything to do with Dan's death? Did you do this? I became very enclosed. And I didn't trust anybody because I didn't know.
Deep down, I knew I had to do something. I had a personal interest in this now, unlike any other case that I've ever worked. And I told myself and I told Jenny that I will work it until the day I die. If it means staying another 20 years on the force, we're gonna get to the bottom of it.
After 2 years, the family of Dan O'Connell fear his murder may never be solved. They decide to take matters into their own hands.
Kathy O'Connell, the sister to Dan, reached out to a group of retired homicide detectives, forensic psychologists out of Philadelphia called the VDOC Society. We ended up presenting our case to the VDOC Society, hoping for an answer.
This is precisely what we do, is offer advice and direction and peer review for free on stalled investigations. In many cases, it's just about getting a set of fresh eyes with no existing sort of presumptions or biases to look at something objectively, and you'd be amazed what the results can be.
Richard Walter, a criminal profiler and one of the Society's founding members, agrees to take a look at the case.
Mr. Walter was able to paint a better picture of the crime scene for us. He indicated that this crime showed a lack of emotion. It was very purposeful. The shooter was detached from the victims. He wanted to show power over the victims. This is not an anger retaliatory, a jealous husband, angry coworker type of situation. You didn't see that multiple shots to the body. You didn't see signs of overkill. This was a power-assertive, cold and calculated killing.
Detective Petit and Richard Walter start from the beginning. digging into the background of all of Dan's close friends and colleagues.
Of the top 10 persons of interest, we were able to rule out 9 of them. There was just one person left that we could not rule out completely, and that was Ryan Ericson.
Detectives look deeper into Father Ericson's background and discover something alarming.
We learned before he came to Hudson that a college student reported that he had been provided alcohol while he was underage, and that he had been sexually assaulted by Father Ryan Ericson. Just because he's doing these sexual assaults doesn't mean he's a killer, but it gives us an idea of his mental state. If he's committing this type of crime, who's to say he can't commit another further, bigger crime?
Detectives track Father Ericson down at the parish, and he agrees to come into the station for an interview.
We questioned him about his actions regarding these sex assaults and the consequences of underage alcohol consumption.
How often did you have him drink with you?
I think maybe 3 or 4 times.
Did he ever become highly intoxicated and get sick?
He did.
Tell me about that.
Well, he got sick, and so I went and I put him into the shower, took his clothes and got his clothes washed, and then brought him back, and then put him to bed.
He pretty much blew it off, stating that he was just trying to teach these kids a lesson on how to drink and how to consume alcohol responsible.
Why would you provide alcohol to somebody underage?
It's what, I mean, that's what they, when I grew up, that's the kind of thing we did. We had alcohol, it was okay to have that kind of thing. So I've never had that it's evil or bad kind of idea to it.
I'm talking legally.
Yeah, I know.
We have statutes.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay?
Yeah, I did wrong. Yeah.
Who in the right mind would be even remotely saying that they're trying to teach these kids how to be responsible with alcohol? We need to find out where Father Ryan Ericson was on February 5th, 2002, the day Dan and James were killed. He stated at 8:00 a.m. he conducted Mass. Between 11:30 and 12:30, he had lunch at the school with the children. And between 12:30 and 1:30, he went back to the church to work on his computer.
This information is important because if it's true and accurate, it shows that he was not at the scene. And so if he has an alibi here, it's important information.
When I asked him what he heard about the homicides, he stated,
I heard that he was shot at his desk. And James, I heard, was shot in a doorway.
Do you recall where you heard this from?
You know, I'm not exactly positive, no.
And he stated that he read it in the newspaper or heard it on the news or something to that effect.
In the course of this investigation, never once has anybody from the Hudson Police Department ever mentioned where the bodies were, positions, etc. Nor in the course of this investigation to 1,900 and some people has anybody ever brought up a speculation, a probability, a possibility, or anything like that as far as where the bodies were. Nor has anybody told us how many times they were shot or where they were shot. If that hasn't been brought up in 1,900 some interviews, and out of the course of 5 people in our department that knew exactly that, and not even he knows where that was, why do you know that?
I don't know why I know that.
Or why are you giving us information that this is what you heard?
Well, this is what I have heard. If you ask me a question, I tell you the answer. So if I overheard that and I didn't tell you, then I'd be lying to you.
That was a huge red flag for me because he just explained in detail the crime scene. That information was never, ever released to the public. The only person that would know this information is the shooter.
After revealing details of the crime that only the killer would know, detectives zero in on Father Ericson as their prime suspect.
For what you're telling us about the scene, not much of that information was given out to the media. None of that was broadcast.
This is the very first we've ever heard of it.
If you're given direct things, Ryan,
I don't know.
Why?
All I know is I may have overheard that.
You're giving us information that was never, ever released to the public. You have told us exactly what happened in the funeral home. However, he still denies it.
Did you kill Dan?
I did not kill Dan.
Did you want to kill him?
No, I did not. I have no reason to want to kill Dan O'Connell.
One of the last questions I asked him was, if you committed these homicides and knew you could get away with it, would you tell anybody?
If I did it, and I've been living with it for this long, and you guys had me cornered here, I'd break. I'd tell you. I know I would. And the reason is because I think the guilt would be so overwhelming. I really do.
If you could get away with it, would you tell us?
No. Yeah, I mean, if I could get away with it?
Yes.
Probably no. I mean, I could try to get away with human nature says you try to get away with it.
And I said, if you committed these homicides and knew you were going to get caught, what would you do?
You know, I've thought about suicide before. You know, if I did something that heinous, I'd tell you what. I think I'd be thinking about it now, and I'd be ready to, and that's
But you're not
the
thinking
case.
about that?
No, that's not the case.
My reaction when he said he would commit suicide if he was going to get caught was overwhelming. I mean, that's a sin in itself to commit suicide in the eyes of the Catholic Church.
Investigators now have enough circumstantial evidence to request a search warrant.
So we end up conducting a search warrant at his house, and we seize his computer. We found several images of child sex assaults. We located a software device that he put on his computer in an attempt to wipe the hard drive. We located 16 different firearms, and clearly we were most interested in the 2 9mm that he had. Those were sent to the crime lab.
When detectives dig deeper into Father Ericson's computer, it reveals a key piece of evidence.
There was no activity on his computer between 12:30 and 1:30, like he said. We have to wonder now if between 1:07 and 1:22 p.m., Ryan Ericson killed Dan and James.
Having destroyed Father Ericson's alibi, detectives work to figure out why he would want Dan O'Connell, the town's beloved funeral director, dead. Their questions are answered when a surprising witness comes forward.
Dan had coffee with the bus driver at one of the local stores. And according to her, Dan told her that he had a meeting with Father Ericson later on that day. Dan was concerned about Father Ericson and about his relationship with boys and allegations of touching and that type of thing, which would give us a motive.
Detectives now theorize that Father Ericson was the mysterious 1 p.m. meeting that Dan had booked last minute on the day he was murdered.
Clearly, Dan knew something about Ryan Ericson that he didn't want let out.
Dan was the kind of guy, it's like, go head on. I'm going to talk to you first before I go to the police. But I am going to the police.
Detectives race to the rectory to arrest Father Ericson. They are met by his superior, Deacon Russ Lundgren.
He advised that Ryan Ericson put a rope around his neck, tied it to the balcony, and jumped off and committed suicide. Russ Lundgren found a couple letters on Ryan Ericson's desk. One of them was a last will and testament, and the other was a letter just stating he didn't do it.
I've lived a hard but exciting life. I learned and I taught. I helped people and I hurt them, but I never killed anyone. My ego, my pride, my lust, my envy have always stopped me from being the best person I could be. I am tired.
By saying in your letter that you didn't do it, it's almost akin to saying that you did. And in this note, he talks about certain characteristics in himself that he's not happy with, even though he denies doing the crime. I see this as kind of a shame-anger cycle, where you blame other people, but then when you have nobody else to blame, you end up blaming yourself.
But what Deacon Lundgren tells them next confirms their deepest suspicions.
A few days earlier, Lundgren overheard Father Ryan Ericson slamming his fist on the desk and said, "God damn it, I did it, and they're gonna get me." And Lundgren peeked his head in the office and said, "What are you talking about?" And he said, "Do you know what they do to priests in prison?" That statement alone is a confession. There's no doubt in my mind that Ryan Ericson killed Dan O'Connell and James Ellison.
Detectives now believe they know what happened in the final 24 hours of Dan O'Connell's life.
He left his home at 7:40 a.m. and met with his brother Mike in Baldwin about 8 o'clock. Around 9 o'clock, Dan leaves the meeting and arrives in Hudson and has coffee with the bus driver about 9:30. Dan told the bus driver that he had a meeting with Ericson between 12:30 and 1:30. At 1:07, Dan calls an engraving company. Sometime between 1:07 and 1:22, Father Ryan Ericson is in the funeral home. He pulled the trigger, killed Dan O'Connell in cold blood. And as he's getting ready to leave, James Ellison just happens to walk through that doorway. And now we have a witness. James was in the wrong spot at the wrong time, and he paid the price.
When detectives tell Jenny that they believe Father Ericson killed her husband and his intern, she's in disbelief.
It shocked the hell out of me because that man was in my house hours after he shot and killed Dan and James. He consoled me and my family. He spoke at Dan's funeral, and that was almost as bad as the day that Dan was murdered, because I trusted that man. He took away my faith in my Catholic Church, and I felt I didn't know anybody. If he could shoot two men in cold blood and go about his life as if nothing happened.
St. Croix County District Attorney Eric Johnson requests a John Doe hearing.
A John Doe hearing is something similar to a grand jury hearing, except for it will not result in charges coming, but it will show that there was a sufficient amount of evidence to find the person guilty of the offense.
After only 20 minutes, the judge rules that Father Ericson was the likely killer.
His findings were that we not only showed probable cause that Father Ericson killed Dan and Jim, but also beyond a reasonable doubt.
The judge came back and said, on a scale of 1 to 10, this case is a 10 out of 10.
He did it. He would have been guilty. And I was like, okay, now it's over. That was closure. I could shut that chapter finally in my life and open up a new one. And that's when I decided to start to live and breathe, because it was done.
Detectives are finally able to bring closure to the families of both Dan O'Connell and James Ellison.
It felt like a big weight was lifted off my shoulder, because I know it affected my family. I know it affected the victims. It was just a huge sense of relief that what took 2 years seemed like it took 10.
But the scars still remain after all these years.
I think of all the time and memories and things that Dan has missed in the life of the kids. The learning how to drive, going to prom, graduating from high school. He's just missed out on a lot. But we're survivors. And the kids and I, we talk about that a lot. There's nothing we can't survive because we've been to hell and back already.